Welcome to Counseling Today. I'm Herman Cummings, and with me today is...
My name is Grace Lopez.
Today we're going to be talking about practicum and internship. And to discuss this with us is the Practicum and Internship Program Coordinator, Dr. Michael Baltimore.
Hi, thank you guys for allowing me to come on here today and talk about practicum and internship. You know, it really is one of the most important clinical experiences that you'll have while you're in our 2-year counseling program that's accredited by the American Counseling Association. And for me, I really love the opportunity to come out and talk to students about practicum and internship. You know, it is almost an entire year of being in the role of the professional counselor. So I'm glad to be here, and I thank both Grace and Herman for giving me the opportunity to really talk about this a little bit.
Indeed, and this is a very important topic for everyone that is in the counseling program. First off, I know when I first started, a lot of the students might have had the same questions that I had. They are familiar with what internship is, but would you please tell us, what is practicum?
Well, you know, practicum is the first step in the clinical experience that a student has as they become a professional counselor and graduate our program. So it certainly is a requirement in the program. And so practicum really is that first clinical experience in the role of the professional counselor under supervision. So you really have an opportunity to take what you've learned in the classes, the theory classes, the techniques classes, all of the courses that you've had up to until that time, and then begin to practice those and try some things out. Because I think really for me it's actually about doing. To become a professional counselor is not a matter of a degree or how much you know. It's how you build the helping relationships that you have the responsibility for. So while you're in a practicum, you're actually out at the site. If you're a school counseling person, you're a student, you are at the school site, could be elementary, middle grade, or high school. And if you're community, you're at one of our hospitals, clinics, or agencies in the role of the professional counselor. So you really do carry a caseload, and you're responsible for seeing people and building a treatment plan and intervening and doing the case management, including the charting and all of the responsibilities that come with being a professional in the field. We like to think we have a really great system here that allows our students to find the type of site that they want to be in, to really have a chance to think about their career paths and their career goals, and really get into the type of practicum that will really help and enhance their career as they move forward through the program.
When exactly should students consider thinking about practicum and internship?
Well, you know, one of the things that we do is talk about it at the initial interview process when you come to apply as a counseling student. So we give you some information there and begin planting the seeds there for you to really think about practicum and internship at day one. It's such an important process here that we really want you to collect and gather a lot of data about what you're interested in, the type of population you want to work with, and what is the best match or what's the best fit for you, so that you can get the most out of the experience that'll lead you toward your career. So I say this to students, you know, talk to other students, talk to some of the more advanced students in our program, especially talk to the faculty members and then get their opinion about sites and practice, and you, and certainly talk to the practicum coordinators, both school and community, about sites and the kind of experience that you want to have, and let them ask you some questions, and really take this as a serious step in becoming a professional.
I know there are a lot of courses that you need to take. There are prerequisites. You can't just jump right into practicum internship. Won't you discuss some of the classes that students need to take before they need to get into the practicum or internship?
Well, there's a list of required courses, and basically that gives me an opportunity, Herman, to talk a little bit about our handbook, our online handbook for practicum, which is a requirement that students read, and you actually have to sign an acknowledgement form saying you've read our handbook prior to going out for interviews. But in that handbook, there is a list of required courses, and these are some of our basic clinical courses, starting with counseling skill, which is almost one of our very first courses that you have, the basic counseling skills, and moving up to theory, diagnosis, community seminar for the community students, and school certification and school counseling services and so forth are in there. One of the interesting things as you look at that list is that the diagnostic course, the DSM-4 course, is a requirement, but it's only offered in the summer. And that's an important point, because what happens is that students really need to know that that is called a co-requisite, a course that you take as you start your practicum in the summer. It's particularly for community counseling students. So that course will be taught along as you start practicum. So all of the other courses, or the kind of things that you have to have, group is one of the others I did not mention in that list. But if you look at that list, make sure that you talk with your advisor and have those courses ready prior to starting for community, for example, starting in the summer, with the exception of the DSM course, and then you're able to take that along with practicum.
And once you have decided on your site and you've met with your program coordinator and you filled out the necessary paperwork, which is enlisted inside of the practicum internship handbook, what is the next step students need to take?
Well, I think that conversation, if I can back up just a moment there, I would say that conversation with the practicum coordinator is extremely important, because their job, my job for community and Dr. Gillum's job for school, is to make sure that there's a good fit between you and the site. In other words, you get exactly what you need out of that experience, and that the site gets, well, I have to say it, free labor for you to come in and provide some services for them and share. So that's a balance, if you will, that you get the kind of experience that you need in your training, and they get the benefit of your work there as well. So I think it's very important that you spend time really talking with the coordinator about the experience. You know, one of the questions I like to ask students is this, and that is, what population do you see yourself working with when you leave the program? What's of most interest? Is it children? Is it adolescents? Adults? Is it couples? Marriages? Families? The elderly? Substance abuse? I mean, there's so many sites out there that we have to offer students that we want to make sure that there's a good connection and a good fit. Now, back to your question, I think actually what you have to do for the most part is, once you've met with the coordinator and he or she okays you to go do the interviewing process, you want to make sure that you interview with a person at the site who can sign the paperwork for you to start your practicum internship there at the particular site. And you'll have 3 forms to turn in to the coordinators, and that is the acknowledgement form saying that you've read the handbook, the course prerequisite form, and then there's a 2-page application in which your site supervisor has to sign off, and it puts their credentials on there as well, because one of the most important things that we have to have, and this is in place for your eventual licensure or certification, but also for KCRIP standards, is that you have a licensed person on site that will supervise you at least 1 hour face-to-face per week during your practicum and internship. So those are the 3 forms that you have to turn in.
Yeah, that's very important, which I'm glad that you touched on that. The site that you choose must match your career goals. Now, Grace is going to be asking you a couple of questions about the actual process and once you actually enter the practicum.
So after you've interviewed, what's the following steps and you have all the paperwork in? What should the student do after?
Well, you know, this is a course, so you do have to register for practicum, and so just like any other course, you want to register and talk with Ms. Patty Jamison and make sure that you are registering for that course. You've had the prerequisite, everything is turned back into the practicum coordinator. The practicum coordinators will approve that typically, and then you're free to enroll in the class. Prior to starting practicum and internship, one of the things that you need to do is make sure that you have liability insurance, which is a requirement for all of our students prior to starting practicum and internship, whether you're school or community. So that insurance is available through the American Counseling Association at a reasonable rate. It also is encouraging you to become a student member of those organizations, and that way you'll get that student discount rate, and that usually lasts for an entire year through your practicum and internship. So those are the kind of things that you'll have to look forward to.
And once you begin practicum, is there any time that you might need to meet with supervisors, whether in school or on site? I know you mentioned 1 hour.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it, because we do not want students feeling like they're sort of on their own when they start practicum and internship. In fact, what happens is that you receive supervision both at the site and at the university. And so you have a lot of support during that time while you're learning and having someone to turn to and ask the questions of and really support you through this process, because it is a challenging responsibility when you're carrying a caseload of clients, and we want to be there for you through this process. We really have some wonderful sites out there, some very dedicated site supervisors who will help you through this process. And I just think that you asked a good question, because that supervision process is supportive and challenging, but it's really one of the most important things that will get you through this and get you through this well.
All right. Well, Grace, I know that you have started your internship. What do you think students, the most concern is when they first enter the internship process and we're actually going forth and seeing clients and having to keep up with records and that sort of thing?
Just knowing how to manage your time, being able to have time to write those notes, being able to meet with the clients, and then actually implementing those techniques and those theories that you learned. You don't want to go into a session or a few sessions with a client and not know where you're going. So sometimes it's important for yourself to maybe look back into your theories book, research sometimes on your own to figure out what techniques you want to use and what your treatment plan is. Now, in some sites that you'll have, they'll actually have a treatment plan that they like to use. I know there's some sites who have certain theories that they follow, so if you do enter those sites, you probably will need to follow the theory that they like to use and the model of counseling that they use.
Very good stuff there, and it's very important too. Now, how do you feel about having to meet with the supervisor and making sure that you also get not only the supervision but the group activities as well?
In order to do that, at a lot of different sites, you can start your own groups. You'll be able to implement and start the different population, whatever topics that are at your certain site that you want to start a group. Other sites will have their own groups that you implement. I know in some of them they'll allow you to do presentations that you're working with a group, and those two will count as group hours. And it's also important to make sure that you talk to everybody, including your site supervisor. There might be other doctors around, and if you need help, to contact them, and they might even help you establish those groups in order to get those hours. Now, Dr. Baltimore, for supervision within the actual school system, do we get to choose our supervisor, and how does that work?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, one of the things we want to do as practicum coordinators is to help you find the right site, which we mentioned before. The university supervisors will be assigned to you. So a couple of things that happen in that process is, as I said, you sign up for the course. You will be contacted by the university supervisor to set up and schedule your regular meetings, because remember, you have both group and individual supervision sessions with the university. So just to make that clear, you've got 1 hour at the site, you've got 1.5 hours of group per week, and you have an individual hour with the university supervisor. So the university supervisor runs those groups and schedules those groups, and you will work out with them when you will meet. the standards say that you have to have an hour and a half per week, average, of group supervision. And then the individual supervision can be worked out as well. And of course, with KCREP standards now, we can do triadic supervision, or 2 supervisees with 1 supervisor, counting as the individual portion. So that's an interesting scheduling issue I think we all have to work through. And if I can talk about that just for a minute, overall, one of the things that Herman's question earlier was the notion that we can have, we want to start very early in thinking about this process, but we really have to make a decision about how well we're going to fit this into our schedule, with everybody having so many responsibilities. When you move into practicum, you're probably into 12 to 15 hours per week in the summer to make that 100 hours of on-site experience. And as you move into internship, you're going to have 300 hours over a 15-week semester, which works out to about 20 hours each week. That's a half-time job. And if you're working, if you're doing some other things, have a family, you have responsibilities and taking classes, I might add, this is going to be a challenge. So we want people to start early. In fact, we've actually had some people who had to change jobs or get special schedules in their workplace in order to do this. But from our perspective, you're here once, and you want to get the best possible experience that you can. And I think what you have to do as part of this is to really focus on those people that you're seeing. You guys talked about it in Counseling Now, the very first episode of the show, how important it is to focus on those clients. I think you're dead on. I think it's absolutely crucial. And so when you're in internship, practicum and internship, and seeing cases, it seems to me that you really want to focus on that and not be distracted. So it may take you to have to modify your day-to-day routine in order to get the best possible experience there. So yeah, back to your question. We have individual, group at the university, and 1 hour per week face-to-face on the site for supervision.
And back to what you were saying about scheduling, is there a recommended amount of time classes that a student should take while in practicum and internship?
Well, there's certainly an upper limit. We don't want to go too far, because that gets into exactly what we were talking about, the notion that you have so many other challenges and things to attend to that you don't put all your energies and efforts in thinking about how to help that client. So typically people will take 2 courses generally along with practicum and internship. Well, if I could, I wanted to just give you talk a couple minutes here about clinical supervision itself. And one of the things that I think I've had as concern of mine for a period of time has been the notion that we haven't really prepared students for supervision, for getting the most out of supervision. It's a very different kind of thing. People think and define supervision very differently outside of the counseling experience, and so sometimes people come in and think supervision is going to be about a senior member, someone with more experience telling you what to do. And as it turns out, that's not exactly what happens in that. We want you to learn through this, and supervision is a very collaborative experience, one in which sometimes there's some teaching going on, sometimes it's consultation and case management, and then sometimes it's actually some counseling going on in there, because I think we all need those kinds of we play those type of roles as we learn and grow in our role as a professional counselor. So preparing for supervision is a very important thing to do. And what I mean by that is that when you're in practicum and internship, that you really prepare for those group and individual sessions. You have questions ready for the supervisor. You want to get as much out of that experience as you possibly can to make you a better counselor. And one way to do that is really to attend and think about all the kinds of questions that you'll have. And some of these kinds of things will be about you. It turns out that not all supervision is really about cases and how help the client, but it's about you and how to become a better counselor. So you become the focus in that work. So yes, that's a challenge, but you get a lot of support with that, and I really urge everyone to take advantage of the opportunity for clinical supervision with the university and the site supervisors, and go in hungry. Go in and get as much out of it as you can in each hour. Be curious, ask those questions, be professional. It's not a time for chit-chat and it's kind of getting along. It's really kind of understanding what the professional role is. And if you'll do those things and prepare for supervision, you're going to have a great experience. We're here to help you with that. And there's nothing better we like to do than see our students really go on to become professionals in the field.
Very excellent work. Today we've discussed about what practicum and internship is. If anyone has any questions, more questions about practicum and internship, please contact your practicum and internship program coordinator. For Grace Lopez, I'm Herman Cummings from Counseling Today, saying good night.